Ladies and gentlemen, everything in your outer world begins in the invisible. Every connection, every thought, every attraction, it all springs from the unseen realm of consciousness. If you wish for someone to think of you constantly, it is not their mind you must reach, but the spiritual core from which their mind receives impressions. The mistake many make is to believe they must chase, persuade, or convince in the physical world. But you hold something far more powerful than persuasion. You hold the ability to impress the subconscious mind, where all reality takes shape. You communicate most effectively without words, without touch, and without physical action. You communicate in the language of feeling. To impress the subconscious, you must first understand its nature. The subconscious mind does not reason, compare, or analyze. It accepts as true whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and repetition. It is the silent builder of your reality, the invisible architect that shapes every outer experience you have. When it comes to making someone think of you constantly, the conscious approach, talking to them, convincing them, trying to make yourself memorable, may create temporary effects. But the deeper and lasting influence comes from what you plant in the subconscious, both yours and theirs. The subconscious responds to images and emotions, not to logic or struggle. It cannot distinguish between what is physically happening and what is vividly imagined with conviction. When you form a clear mental picture of someone thinking of you, paired with the strong emotional charge of love, warmth, or closeness, you are sending a direct command to the subconscious. That command is not limited to your own mind. It resonates outward, influencing the subconscious of the other person as well. This is why inner work is infinitely more powerful than outer effort. You must approach this not as a performance, but as a state of being. Close your eyes and picture the person exactly as they are, but not in the current circumstances. See them as already thinking about you, already holding you in their mind with fondness and attention. Their posture, their expression, even the subtle energy in their presence should convey that you are on their mind. This is the image you want to impress upon the subconscious, because once it is impressed deeply enough, it will take on a life of its own and move into physical expression. The conscious mind will try to interfere. It will ask questions, demand proof, and measure progress. But the conscious mind is only the gatekeeper. It cannot create on its own. You bypass its resistance by immersing yourself so fully in the imagined reality that it feels natural, almost like recalling a memory. The more natural it feels, the more readily the subconscious accepts it. And once it accepts it, the image is as good as done in the invisible. There is no need for tension or urgency. The subconscious is not moved by desperation, it is moved by conviction. When you act from a place of lack, you reinforce the lack. But when you act from the feeling that it is already so, you set the creative power of the subconscious into motion. Imagine holding a conversation with the person in which they speak to you about how often you cross their mind. Imagine their tone of voice, the way their eyes meet yours, the small, unconscious gestures that reveal they are thinking of you with affection. These details anchor the image and make it more real to the subconscious. The process is not about forcing thoughts into their mind. It is about creating a reality in which the bond between you is already established. When you repeatedly visit this reality in imagination and feel it to be true, you are imprinting it into the subconscious as fact. And because the subconscious operates under the law that, as within, so without, it will orchestrate events, emotions, and impulses in the outer world that match the inner picture. The person will begin to think of you not as a new idea, but as something that has always been true for them. Their thoughts will naturally turn toward you again and again, because in the subconscious realm, that is already who they are in relation to you. To use inner vision as memory rather than wish is to approach imagination from the position of already having, already being, already experiencing. When you wish for something, you place it in the future, somewhere out of reach, And in doing so, you affirm that you do not yet possess it. The subconscious does not respond to the idea of someday, or maybe. It responds to the conviction of, this is so now. If you want someone to think of you non-stop, you must see it as if it has already happened, and you are recalling it as a fact, not hoping it might happen in the future. Memory carries a different emotional signature than wishing. When you recall a memory, you do not strain for it, you do not doubt it, you do not wonder if it might occur. You accept it as something that already belongs to your experience. In the same way, you must build your inner vision as though you are remembering a moment that has already taken place. See the person, hear their voice, notice the way they look at you with familiarity and warmth. Feel the ease in your body, the calm assurance that this is not a fragile hope, but an established truth. When you engage your imagination in this way, you remove the mental distance between you and the outcome. Wishing creates a gap. Remembering closes it. This is the essence of living from the end, dwelling in the state where the desire is fulfilled and the event is behind you. This subtle shift in perspective transforms the energy you send into the subconscious. Instead of saying, I want them to think of me, you are saying, I know they think of me. That knowing becomes a silent command that the subconscious cannot resist. Begin by choosing a simple scene that represents the result you desire. Perhaps it is them sending you a message saying, I was just thinking about you. Perhaps it is you running into them and they mention how often you've been on their mind. Choose something short, simple, and emotionally charged, and then replay it in your mind not as a fantasy, but as a replay. Add the sensory details that make it feel like a real recollection. The tone of their voice, the lighting in the scene, the feeling in your chest. As you practice this, notice how your emotions shift. A wish often carries impatience or doubt, but a memory carries security and ease. Let that ease wash over you until it becomes second nature to think of the connection in this way. This calm conviction is the signal the subconscious recognizes as truth. And because the subconscious governs both your actions and the unseen impulses of others, the person you are thinking of will begin to respond in alignment with the image you hold. Revisiting this inner memory regularly deepens the impression. Just as a real memory becomes stronger the more you recall it, so too does this imagined memory become a dominant pattern in the subconscious. And once the subconscious accepts it as a fact, it will orchestrate the necessary thoughts, feelings, and circumstances to bring it into full physical expression. In their mind, they will begin to feel as though thoughts of you are a natural part of their inner world, as if they have always been there. To communicate in the language of feeling is to bypass the resistance of logic and speak directly to the creative core of consciousness. Words can be doubted, images can be questioned, but feeling is the universal signal that the subconscious understands without translation. Every impression you leave on the deeper mind is carried not by the arrangement of words, but by the emotional charge behind them. If you wish for someone to think of you without pause, it is not enough to merely imagine them doing so. You must generate the feeling that matches the reality in which it is already happening. Feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is the proof you give yourself that the unseen scene is real. When you recall a joyful memory, you feel the joy again in your body, even though the event is no longer taking place physically. In the same way, when you create an imagined scene and infuse it with deep emotion, you cause your body and subconscious to experience it as if it were unfolding right now. The subconscious does not differentiate between a vividly felt inner event and an external one. This is why feeling is the secret key to telepathic influence. Begin by deciding what emotion you would naturally feel if the person you have in mind were constantly thinking about you. Would it be a deep sense of closeness, a quiet confidence, a warmth in your chest, a spark of excitement? Identify that primary feeling and then use it as the foundation for your inner work. Do not try to force the image until the emotion is present. Let the emotion rise first, and then allow the image to form naturally within it. When you send a thought to someone through feeling, you are not pushing into their mind, you are aligning with a shared state where both of you are already connected. Imagine them in this shared emotional space. Picture them smiling as they think of you, perhaps pausing during their day because you crossed their mind. Feel their thoughts as if they are being carried by the same current that you are on. This shared vibration is what makes the connection real in the unseen. And once it is real there, it cannot help but manifest outwardly. Do not confuse emotional intensity with strain. Strain comes from trying too hard to force an outcome, which signals the subconscious that it is not yet real. True emotional intensity is natural and flowing. It feels like the warmth of sunlight, not the tightness of tension. The more you relax into the feeling, the more vividly and easily the inner scene takes shape. That ease is the mark of an impression being accepted by the subconscious without resistance. Each time you visit this feeling, you are speaking to the other person's deeper mind. The subconscious mind of another is open to impressions that match your own conviction and emotional tone. When they receive the impression, they will translate it into their own conscious awareness as a thought that appears to arise naturally within them. They will not know why they are thinking of you more often. It will simply feel natural, as if it is their own idea. The stronger and more consistent your emotional communication, the deeper the impression becomes. Over time, it becomes a part of the shared energetic field between you. This is why the language of feeling is so powerful. It is not bound by time, space, or physical limitations. It is the direct, unfiltered way to send your reality into the mind of another. And when the feeling is fully accepted, their thoughts will follow effortlessly. Replacing wanting with knowing is the turning point where imagination becomes creation. Wanting is born out of the awareness of not having, and every time you dwell in wanting, you reinforce the absence of what you desire. Knowing, on the other hand, is rooted in possession. It is the inner certainty that the thing you desire is already yours. When you want someone to think of you constantly, the desire often begins with longing. But longing keeps the fulfillment always out of reach. The shift to knowing is the moment you step into the reality where it is already accomplished. When you want, you watch, you wait, you measure progress, and you notice its lack. All of these actions send a signal to the subconscious that the outcome is still in the future. But when you know, there is no anxious checking, no mental searching for signs. Knowing is quiet, steady, and unshaken by appearances. It is the difference between hoping the sun will rise and knowing it will. The subconscious accepts whatever state you dwell in most consistently, and if that state is knowing, it must reproduce it in your external world. To move from wanting to knowing, you must enter the scene of fulfillment so completely that you lose awareness of it being imaginary. This is not a forced mental act, but a surrender to the feeling that it is already so. You may picture the person thinking of you and feel a deep calm wash over you, as if you are remembering something familiar. You may imagine a conversation with them and experience it with the same ease as recalling a pleasant memory. The more natural it feels, the more it becomes knowing rather than wanting. Wanting always carries a sense of distance, a gap between you and the object of desire. Knowing erases that gap. In knowing, you are already in possession of the outcome. You no longer ask, will they think of me? Because you are already living in the state where they do. This is not pretending or wishing, it is claiming and accepting. The mind will try to pull you back into wanting, because wanting is familiar. Each time this happens, gently bring yourself back to the feeling of already having. This repeated return to knowing is how the state solidifies in the subconscious. Knowing is not loud. It does not require you to force feelings of excitement or passion at all times. Often it feels quiet, grounded, and matter of fact. If you knew with absolute certainty that the person was thinking about you right now, you would not need to convince yourself of it or constantly seek proof. You would simply carry on with a subtle inner satisfaction, confident that it is so. This is the attitude that impresses the subconscious most deeply. When you hold the state of knowing, you release the struggle that often blocks manifestation. Struggle tells the subconscious that the goal is separate from you. Knowing tells it the opposite, that it is already a part of your reality. In this state, the subconscious moves without resistance, arranging circumstances, shifting the thoughts of others, and bringing the unseen connection into visible form. The person begins to think of you because in your reality they always have, and the outer world must eventually conform to that inner truth. Persisting in silent inner communion means holding the connection alive in the unseen, regardless of what appears in the outer world. It is not a one-time effort or a fleeting exercise. It is the quiet, steady practice of returning again and again to the inner scene, where the relationship or bond is already established. Each time you revisit it, you strengthen the impression on the subconscious, both yours and theirs, until it becomes a living reality that feels more real than any temporary outer appearance. This inner communion is silent because it does not require spoken words in the physical world. It is a meeting of consciousness, a shared space where you and the other person are together beyond time and distance. In imagination, you might walk with them, speak to them, or simply feel their presence beside you. You may imagine a look they give you, a small smile, or the warmth of their energy. These simple details, repeated with calm assurance, begin to weave an unbreakable thread between you and the unseen. Persistence is the power that transforms faint impressions into fixed realities. A single moment of imagining can plant the seed, but it is the repeated watering of that seed through daily communion that causes it to grow. Each visit to the inner world deepens the feeling that this connection is natural and established. Over time, it becomes second nature to think of them in this way, and because the subconscious accepts whatever is felt as familiar and normal, it will arrange circumstances to reflect that bond outwardly. This persistence is not driven by urgency or impatience. It is a gentle returning, much like returning to a favorite place in your mind where you feel at ease. You are not trying to force the other person to think of you. You are living in the state where they already do. Each time you enter this state, you are reinforcing it as the truth. The outer world may at first show no sign of change, but this is irrelevant to the process. The unseen work is the real cause, and the seen effects must eventually follow. Silent communion also has a way of dissolving doubt. The more time you spend in the inner reality, the less you look for signs or proof, because the inner experience itself becomes satisfying. You begin to feel the connection as something ongoing and unbroken, even when there is no physical interaction. This steady inner knowing sends a continuous impression to the subconscious mind of the other person, and because the subconscious operates beyond awareness, they receive it without resistance. Over time, this constant presence in their subconscious translates into thoughts, impulses, and emotions that arise naturally in their conscious mind. They may begin to think of you at odd moments, feel drawn to reach out, or remember you without any external trigger. This is the result of the bond you have maintained in silence, the thread you have strengthened through persistence. The key is to make this inner communion a natural part of your inner life. It should feel as effortless as remembering a loved one or recalling a pleasant moment from the past. You are not trying to build something from scratch each time. You are simply returning to a reality that already exists within you. As this reality becomes more vivid and constant in your mind, it becomes more inevitable in the outer world, and the person begins to think of you not as a fleeting thought, but as an enduring presence in their life. Letting the outer follow the inner is the understanding that the physical world is not the cause of your experience, but the reflection of it. Every event, every word spoken, Every thought that someone has of you begins first as an unseen impression in consciousness. The outer world is simply the mirror, faithfully displaying the image you have held within. When you want someone to think of you constantly, the most effective work is done entirely in the inner realm, where you can shape reality without interference from appearances. Once the inner is set, the outer must conform. This requires trust in the unseen process. Most people attempt to change the outer directly, forgetting that it is only an effect. They speak more, act more, try to be noticed, all the while reinforcing the idea that the connection is not yet real. But the moment you decide inwardly that the bond already exists, and you persist in seeing and feeling it as so, you set in motion a chain of events the outer world cannot resist. The subconscious organizes thoughts, circumstances, and impulses in perfect alignment with the inner truth you have accepted. The outer will often lag behind the inner, just as a reflection in a mirror appears a moment after the movement is made. This is where patience and consistency matter. You cannot look into a mirror, frown, and expect the reflection to smile back. You must first change your own expression and then allow the mirror to respond. In the same way, you change the inner state before the outer can display it. This is why persistence in the inner image is more important than reacting to what you currently see in the physical world. If you see yourself as someone already present in the thoughts of the person you have in mind, the outer will arrange itself to prove that view correct. At first, there may be no outward signs. They may act the same, circumstances may appear unchanged, but this is only the echo of your previous inner state. The new state, if held steadily, will replace the old one in time. Just as seeds do not sprout the moment they are planted, the outer world takes time to display the new growth that has been rooted in imagination. The key is to treat the inner vision as the only reality that matters. You do not abandon it because the outer has not yet caught up. You do not shift back to doubt or longing because nothing has visibly happened. The outer is slow clay, and the inner is the mold that shapes it. The more consistently you hold the mold in place, the more perfectly the clay will form to match it. When the inner reality is fully accepted, your actions, thoughts, and even subtle energy shift to align with it. Without effort, you carry yourself differently, you speak differently, and you emit a presence that matches the state you have claimed. The other person senses this shift, even without understanding why. Their mind begins to respond to the silent influence you have impressed upon it. The connection you formed within becomes real to them, and they begin to think of you more often, not as a sudden intrusion into their life, but as a natural part of their inner world. By letting the outer follow the inner, you work with the true cause of reality rather than chasing its effects. You are no longer reacting to the mirror. You are shaping the image it reflects. When the inner is stable, the outer has no choice but to yield to it, and the thoughts of the person you desire to reach will inevitably turn toward you in perfect alignment with the inner state you have lived in all along.